Rod Dreher is a writer, editor, and cultural critic. He blogs and is a senior editor at The American Conservative, and has written a number of books as well, including his most recent book, The Benedict Option. I was really glad for the opportunity to meet Rod recently, and he graciously agreed to sit down for an interview. So without further ado, I hope you'll enjoy this episode from my interview with Rod Dreher.
I became Orthodox in 2006 when I was living in Dallas, Texas. I had been for a number of years a very faithful Roman Catholic and a public Catholic. I had been a film critic and a columnist for the New York Post and other newspapers, and worked my Catholic faith into the work I did as a journalist. In 2002, I was a writer at National Review magazine when the abuse scandal broke big in Boston. As a faithful Catholic myself and as a new father of a son, I felt it was my duty to write critically about what was happening in the church. And over the next 3 years of doing that, it was a period of intense disillusionment. I learned things about the Catholic Church that I never could have imagined. Now, it's not the case that there is a sinless church. No church is without sin, but in my own case, I had idealized the Catholic Church to such an extent that learning about the lies on top of lies that the bishops told to protect these bad priests, it really broke me. And I got to the point where I just could not believe as a Catholic anymore. And I never imagined that. I always thought that if, as long as I had the syllogism straight in my head, that my faith would be unshakable. And it turns out that wasn't the case at all. And I began with my wife in Dallas. We started attending St. Seraphim Cathedral, OCA Cathedral in Dallas, with no intention of converting, but simply because as Roman Catholics, we knew that the Orthodox Church had valid sacraments and that Jesus Christ was truly present in the Eucharist. Even though we couldn't partake of the Eucharist as Catholics, we at least wanted to be around Jesus in the sacrament and to be able to pray and worship him without that fear and that anger that we had from our experience as Catholics. Well, after 2 or 3 months of this, we said we can't go back. What I experienced in Orthodoxy was what I thought Catholicism would be when I converted as a young man to Catholicism. In my case, when I was trying to decide whether or not to become Orthodox, I sat down with books of theology and read the Roman Catholic case for papal supremacy versus the Orthodox case. And I'm not a professional theologian. I kept going back and forth and couldn't figure it out. And finally, it occurred to me, the truth that saves is Jesus Christ. It's not a proposition. It's not a syllogism. He's a man, the man God. And if for whatever reason I could not become united to Christ as a Roman Catholic, then, but Orthodoxy was offering me that path to theosis, then I should take it, even though I didn't at that time have all of my doubts worked out, my intellectual doubts. I also realized during this time that my intellectualism was, in fact, the point of my loss of faith. That when I converted to Catholicism as a young man, I had read my way into the church. It's funny, but when I was becoming a Catholic, I was about 23 years old, living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and working at my first job at a journalism school. A woman there at the newspaper said, "Oh, I hear you're interested in Catholicism. I'm a Catholic. Why don't you come with me this weekend to work at the Missionaries of Charity Soup Kitchen?" That's Mother Teresa's order. Come work at the soup kitchen, and it'll give you an experience of what being a Catholic is like. I thought that sounded wonderful. So I went down to the soup kitchen, I scrubbed pots, I peeled potatoes, and that was that. When it was over, I thought, well, that's very nice, but I'm really more of an intellectual. My time would be better spent reading books of theology and apologetics. Never went back to the soup kitchen. 13 years later, 14, 15 years later, whenever it was I lost my faith, I had to reflect, if I had done as much with my body to inculcate the faith into my bones through using my body, whether it's in service to the poor or in some other way, my faith might have been stronger. So Orthodoxy taught me this too. And as an Orthodox Christian, I've tried very hard not to be as prideful as I was as a Catholic, not to be as intellectual. There's perfectly good reason to be interested in intellectual things as an Orthodox Christian, but in my case, I made it my false idol, and the Lord broke me of my pride and of my idolization of the intellect. So I came into Orthodoxy in 2006, been Orthodox now for about as long as I was a Catholic, and I love being Orthodox. This is where I should have been all along, but I thank God for giving me the experience of Catholicism, because that's where I first came to know Jesus as my Lord, as an adult Christian, and I have lost the anger that I had at the Catholic Church, the institution, for what it did. But I also, with the abuse, but I also made a point when I came into Orthodoxy not to make an idol of the institutional church. That was my failure. I thought I was being a good Christian by being very loyal and following all the rules. And in fact, that led to my spiritual ruin. So that's how I became Orthodox. And to discover just in the path of being Orthodox, of just showing up at the liturgy, fasting, saying the Jesus prayer, and living the life of an Orthodox Christian, I have gotten so much closer to the Lord than I did as a Catholic. I think primarily because for me the faith is not just something in the head, it's in the body.
Hi again, hope you enjoyed this episode from my interview with Rod Dreher. Please let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments section below. And please subscribe to get notified when new episodes become available, which happens every Friday. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.